Imagine this. You wake up at 3 a.m., your mind racing, your chest tight, with a question you can't silence. What is my purpose? You've spent years chasing answers, scribbling in journals, devouring self-help books, mimicking the paths of those who seem to have it all figured out. Yet here you are, hollowed out by the weight of a question that feels like a riddle with no solution. The paradox is crushing. The more desperately you search for your passion, the more it eludes you. You've been taught that fulfillment lies in finding something, a career, a calling, a destiny, as if it's a hidden object waiting to be uncovered. But what if the question itself is the trap? What if "what is my passion" is the wrong question entirely? Consider the modern obsession with matchmaking your purpose. Swipe right on hobbies, left on careers, endlessly curating an idealized version of yourself based on what you've seen work for others. You admire the extrovert who thrives on stage, the artist lost in their craft, the entrepreneur who burns with vision. So you contort yourself into their shapes, hoping their passion will ignite yours. But it doesn't. Instead, you're left with exhaustion, a closet full of abandoned identities, and the gnawing fear that you're broken. Here's the unsettling truth. You're not lost because you lack passion. You're lost because you've been asking a question designed to keep you searching forever. What is my purpose? Assumes purpose is a static thing to be found, not a flame to be kindled through elimination. It's a question that thrives on lack, on the illusion that you're incomplete until you discover something outside yourself. But what if the answer isn't out there? What if it's buried in the opposite question, one so counterintuitive, it feels like a betrayal of everything you've been taught? What can I live without? This isn't just a question, it's a rebellion. And it's about to unravel everything you thought you knew. The real crisis isn't that you haven't found your passion. It's that you've been conditioned to misunderstand what passion even is. Society sells you a myth. That purpose is something you locate, like a treasure buried in the dirt of experience. But this myth has roots deeper than you think. Carl Jung warned of the collective unconscious, the way culture imprints its scripts onto your psyche without your consent. Nietzsche raged against herd morality, the tyranny of borrowed values that masquerade as truth. And Viktor Frankl, surviving the Holocaust, discovered that meaning isn't found. It's forged in the act of choosing what to endure. Yet here you are, drowning in a sea of options, paralyzed by the fear of choosing wrong. The modern world weaponizes this confusion. Social media feeds you highlight reels of others' purpose, algorithms profit from your endless searching, and the cult of multipotentiality whispers that you should want it all. But this is a lie dressed as liberation. The brain isn't wired for infinite possibility. It thrives on constraint. Neuroscience reveals that decision fatigue erodes willpower, and the paradox of choice ensures that more options lead to less satisfaction. You're not indecisive. You're overwhelmed by a system that equates consumption with identity. Worse, you've been taught to confuse stimulation with meaning. The dopamine hits of new hobbies, the fleeting highs of half-finished projects, they're distractions, not destinations. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the act of lying to yourself to avoid the terrifying freedom of defining your own existence. You cling to the question, what's the passion? Because it lets you delay the real work, cutting away everything that isn't. The tragedy? This chase leaves you emptier than before. Like Sisyphus rolling his boulder, you're trapped in a cycle of seeking without ever arriving. But the exit isn't forward, it's down, into the depths of what you're willing to lose. Because here's the secret no one tells you. Purpose isn't discovered in the light. It's carved from the darkness of what you remove. The cost of this endless search is far more sinister than you realize. Like a slow-acting poison, it hollows you out from within. You become a ghost in your own life, perpetually preparing, never arriving. The evidence is everywhere. The abandoned projects collecting dust, the half-hearted commitments, the gnawing sense that something is missing, even when you're surrounded by opportunity. Cognitive scientists call this the hedonic treadmill, the cruel illusion that the next achievement, the next passion, will finally bring fulfillment. But each time you reach for it, the finish line moves. Your brain, overloaded with options, defaults to a survival mechanism, decision paralysis. You scroll through life like a streaming platform, overwhelmed by content, but starving for meaning. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer saw this clearly. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. You're free to choose, but your desires are programmed by forces you don't even see. Worse, this cycle breeds a quiet despair. Studies on choice overload reveal that too many options don't liberate. They debilitate. The more paths you sample, the less any of them feel real. You become a tourist in your own existence, skimming surfaces but never diving deep enough to hit the bedrock of your identity. And beneath it all lurks the unspoken fear. What if I'm not extraordinary? The cult of passion has sold you a lie, that a life without some grand, preordained purpose is a life wasted. But here's the truth they won't tell you. The obsession with finding your path is a distraction from the real work, living. Not the curated, Instagram-ready version, but the messy, imperfect act of showing up for what remains when the noise fades. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in Auschwitz, discovered that those who survived weren't the ones with grand plans. They were the ones who could find meaning in what was left. A crust of bread, a shared glance, a moment of silence. You've been taught to fear limitation, but limitation is the forge. The artist who never commits to a medium remains a dabbler. The writer who waits for inspiration dies with a blank page. The tragedy isn't that you haven't found your passion. It's that you've been convinced you need one to begin. The way out isn't more searching, it's less. The escape begins with a single radical act. Stop searching for your passion. Start eliminating what isn't it. This is the rebellion no algorithm will recommend. It's not about adding another self-help strategy to your arsenal. It's about burning the arsenal down. History's most profound thinkers understood this. The Stoics practiced negative visualization, not to dwell on loss, but to clarify what truly mattered. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It's not about graceful steps. It's about resisting what pulls you off balance." Friedrich Nietzsche took it further. Become who you are by shedding who you're not. Not through accumulation, but amputation. Here's how to revolt. The Great Subtraction. For the next 30 days, conduct a ruthless audit. Every habit, relationship, and commitment gets one question. Does this demand the best of me, or just distract me from the worst? Delete first. Ask questions later. You'll discover most of what you call options are just inertia in disguise. The distraction fast. Social media, binge watching, idle scrolling. These aren't pleasures. They're anesthesia. Go dark for a week. The withdrawal will feel like madness, until suddenly, the static clears and you hear your own thoughts for the first time in years. The attachment test list. Everything you believe you couldn't live without. Now eliminate one for a month. Not temporarily avoid. Remove. The goal isn't asceticism. It's exposure therapy for your dependencies. You'll find 80% of them were psychological barnacles, not lifelines. The anti-bucket list. Write down every dream you've been carrying for someday. Cross out half. not because they're unworthy, but because clinging to false possibilities is what's killing your real ones. This isn't minimalism. It's strategic obliteration. Like Michelangelo chipping away at marble to reveal the David within, you're not creating your purpose. You're uncovering it by destroying everything that's not it. The philosopher Alan Watts described enlightenment as remembering what you forgot before you were born. That's what elimination does. It strips away the cultural hypnosis until you're left with what was there all along. The revolution won't be televised. It'll happen in the silence after you've canceled the noise. Here is the revelation that changes everything. You do not find yourself. You forfeit the false selves until only the real one remains. Purpose is not a destination. It is the residue of 1,000 surrenders. The ancient Zen masters called this mu, the sacred emptiness where truth appears only after every answer has been discarded. The existentialists named it authenticity, the terrifying freedom of being undefined by anything but your own choices. Modern psychology confirms it. Your brain's default mode network, responsible for self-referential thought, only quiets when you stop performing for an imagined audience. The moment you cease searching externally for validation, the internal compass awakens. This is why elimination works. Where searching failed, clarity emerges in absence. Just as stars become visible only when the sun sets, your essence appears when the glare of others' expectations dims. That hobby you quit but never missed, that friendship that faded without pain, they were never yours to begin with, just costumes you tried on in someone else's play. Depth replaces breadth. A single candle in a dark room illuminates more than 100 in daylight. By burning away the trivial, what remains cannot help but matter. The French writer Camus understood. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. That summer was always there, buried under layers of borrowed winters. The paradox of enough. When you stop asking, what else could I be? You start experiencing, this is what I am. Not as resignation, but as the most radical form of sovereignty. The Japanese concept of ikigai, reason for being, was never about finding some perfect Venn diagram of passion, mission, and vocation. It's about recognizing that meaning was present in the ordinary moments you overlooked while chasing epiphanies. The final truth is this: you've been whole all along, not incomplete, but overcrowded. The anxiety wasn't from lacking purpose, it was from drowning in too many false ones. Now you stand at the threshold, not with answers, but with better questions, not with a map, but with the courage to burn the ones that led you astray. The philosopher Kierkegaard was right. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So live, not toward something, from what remains when all else falls away. The path was never hidden. You were just standing on it.